Welcome to Focus on Claims with Ernie Bray, CEO of ACT.
Hey everyone, Ernie Bray here with another episode of Focus on Claims. And today we're going to focus on the world of fraud. Now, this is an area that I've have a lot of interest in because in the claims industry, that's something that is really important because there's a large percentage of claims out there that do have some instance in fraud. And fraud protection and prevention is really key. And when I find companies out there that are really trying to make a name for themselves that are trying to help in this area, I want to know more about it. And I came across a company called Attestiv. And today I got the CEO, Nicos Vekiarides, on today to talk about his company. Hey, welcome, Nicoss. Glad to have you on.
Thanks for having me today, Ernie.
Hey, you know what? When I heard about you guys, I was seeing what you were doing. I'm very interested in finding more about what you guys do. But before we jump in, hey, tell me a little about you. I saw your LinkedIn profile. I have seen a lot about you. Tell me your story. How'd you get into all this and what's your background?
Well, my background is MIT and Carnegie Mellon, largely technology. Of course, I'm a recovering technologist, so I've become an entrepreneur since, and a serial entrepreneur for that matter. So I've started a couple of companies along with my co-founder here, largely in the enterprise IT space, one which we sold to Hewlett Packard and the other which we sold to EMC. And as we kind of continue this journey, in particular, one thing we noticed is a problem of the garbage in, garbage out problem, particularly when you're storing and protecting data. And this time around for this company, we decided to look at solving that issue, particularly at a time when we're surrounded by a lot of things that are fake, whether it's fake news, fake photos, fake videos. We decided we can provide a really valuable service by helping provide authenticity.
So let me ask you this. So you're in Boston, right? And so you went to MIT, is that right?
That's correct.
So, and these other companies you started in the past, were you all based out of there the whole time in that area?
We were based in the Boston area. There was one that moved into the Northeast, so it was in New Jersey. But on the other hand, I've been here largely all my life, but we do have a small office in San Diego, so I don't want to leave.
Yes, San Diego. It's nice and warm here. At least it's not. Is it snowing? Is that snow back there? Or were you snowing today? Or what's going on?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So here we are at the end of April, and it's snowing in Boston.
Well, at least your San Diego people out here are enjoying a nice day. We got like about 75, 80 degrees. And yeah, I've been to Boston a few times. What's the tech scene like there? Because I know is it a growing area of a lot of tech companies?
There's always been a lot of tech companies and a lot of venture capitalists. So it's a great place for entrepreneurs to start a company, and it's a great place to build teams.
That's awesome. With that in mind, what are some of the ideas that you think that areas that this could be utilized in your company is targeting? What's the focus target kind of market for your business?
Well, at a high level, it's really any business or organization that consumes digital media, photos, videos, even documents in order to make decisions. One of our co-founders, Mark Morley, happened to have an insurance background, and we started talking to insurance very early on. And as you know, insurance tends to see a lot of fraud. And we thought we could make a big difference, and things started to resonate there. And that's how we started in insurance. Over time, we're also seeing a lot of interest in healthcare, public safety, government, and other similar industries.
Okay. So yeah, me being on the insurance side, yeah, I know there's a whole lot of opportunity there because there's been studies out there, and I don't have the exact percentage right now, but there's always some percentage of claims that have some embellishment going on, and whether it's not just in the auto side, whether it's the repair part or the reporting of the claim, even on some of the documents, there could be things that going on that are suspicious. So I think there's a lot of money being lost, and this is an area that has opportunity for a solution such as yours. Now, like I said, we chatted, before that I think there's a lot of opportunity on the auto claim side, and there's potentially in homeowners. There's a lot of opportunities there. What are some of the ways that you've seen clients that maybe have been testing the system, or that there's opportunities? What areas are people currently like testing it out?
Well, there's various areas in insurance. So underwriting, we see a lot of personal property underwriting, where it's sort of an area that's ripe for modernization, right?
Hmm.
Instead of when you insure a Rolex watch, or whether it be
Well,
even your smartphone, right?
yeah.
The screens tend to crack all the time, right?
So people could be filing you. So you're saying that like in an underwriting situation, somebody could maybe try to take a picture of a picture, or they would try to take a picture of somebody else's watch someplace. Is that what happens, or things
Yeah,
like that?
absolutely. So if the diamond ring picture happens to be located at Tiffany's, do you really know that this person owns the ring? Maybe if it's in somebody's house, now you have a little bit more confidence that this is legit.
So theoretically, if somebody was trying to insure a piece of property, they're just taking a picture and they're sending it to an insurance company in a normal way. That's how they're getting insured in some of these policies. So there's no way to really verify.
Many cases, yeah, many cases just a receipt, or essentially uh, a piece of paper that
Wow.
is essentially
So that's ripe for fraud when you think about it. If there's no real true verification, then that's a real a hole that needs to be covered.
Yeah, and that's where we're going. And what we can do by introducing photos is we also make it a much more convenient user experience. So now you
Mhm.
can do everything with your smartphone. You just take a few photos. You can take a photo of a receipt or an appraisal, submit it. Within seconds, you're done. But at the same time, it's convenient, but it's also reducing fraud on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that when we had spoken before, I was very interested in because, like I told you, I think anything that can add a layer of protection of fraud prevention out there is really important to the carriers. And I see it as, in a way, could be used as a fraud prevention tool because if you're layering the verification of photographs over, I mean, different areas. I mean, so I'm thinking about claims. You're talking about underwriting. What are some other areas? Is it just photos of actual objects, or could it be documents, or how do you like? What are some of the things that you could do with it?
Well, there's the area of inspections. So we also work on commercial inspections. And this can happen without the need of a physical inspector. So in a time
Okay.
like this with COVID-19, maybe you don't want a physical inspector on the premises. And it's much more convenient to be able to do this self-service. So we allow insureds to do this on their using their mobile device. And simply walk through and be able to inspect their premises. So it creates a lot of convenience. So that's one way, but we also see, yeah, for documents. So things such as workers' comp or life insurance. Sometimes the documents are forged, and that's part of the fraud. So we can also help protect documents as well.
Oh wow! So it's not just the photos of an actual object per se. It could be actually documents as that really actually adds a whole layer of different things to think about then. So really, when you think about it, what's the secret sauce? What's the magic behind this? Like how to explain it to an average listener? Let's say somebody that's not um, tech savvy to the point where they know all this. How would you explain how this works behind the scenes, or how do you make this happen?
Well, the technology works two ways. One is at the point of capture.
Hmm.
So when you take the photo,
Okay.
if our APIs or our apps are used, then essentially we fingerprint that photo, which is a digital cipher that's stored on a blockchain. Now that's a lot of words,
Yep.
but what it means is we put that fingerprint somewhere where it's immutable. And it can't change. And from
Okay.
that point on, we can determine if this photo or video or document has changed. So that's sort of the prevention methodology. But we also have detection, which uses AI. So we
Hmm.
have an AI analysis that runs in the cloud and looks at these images and determines if they've been altered in any way. And we look across, we actually score these images across a bunch of different categories. So the magic is that we make this all run in real time. It's very fast, less than a second per image.
Hmm.
And when you see the results, essentially when you look at a photo, you have all of this analysis that goes with it in real time.
Yeah, that's what I found very interesting when I was giving it a little test run. Um, we played around with it, tried to use some tools to alter it, and it was catching these things. And I think, what are some of the? I mean, like I know you can try Photoshop, you can try different things. It'll catch alterations, and people can try to to do things to alter documents that way. I mean, when I saw that, I was very impressed with it. But what are some of the indicators? Like, what are some things that can catch that maybe people might be surprised about?
Well, sometimes it's the metadata. You could have a valid picture, but wrong time or wrong place,
Hmm.
and that's usually a recipe for fraud.
Yeah.
The obvious one is the media editing, which is the Photoshops, which
Yep.
are really child's play these days, right? Anybody
Yeah.
can get their hands
Oh
on
yeah.
one of these media editing tools. You mentioned sort of the recapture, taking photos of screens,
Yep.
even reuse. Some of the carriers tell us stories about how people download photos that look like their vehicles. It's
Yeah.
amazing what people try to do.
I've heard that too.
Finally, finally, inventory of what's inside the photos, right? If you're looking to insure a Rolex watch, hopefully there's a Rolex watch in the photo.
Right. I mean, there's so many different uses of that when I think about that. It's just like I was really impressed with the color code ratings you have built in and sort of like I don't know, how would you describe it? Sort of a green to red sort of heat, a little bar that kind of gives you an alert. And I think it's really exciting because then you can kind of bring your eyes or whoever it is to ones that look suspicious. Now, not everything is necessarily fraud, but if it brings an extra pair of eyes to something, it gives somebody a way to question it. Um, so let me ask you this. So if you're trying to do this, you said there's a capture mechanism through the app, but you also have the ability to take photographs that may not be captured through your app and still do an analysis. Is that right?
That's exactly right, because ultimately photos may come from multiple sources, and
Okay.
even in the case of a car accident, somebody might pull out their phone and their first instinct is to just use the camera on their phone to take photos. And if you
Right.
submit those to an insurance carrier, what are they going to tell you? Well, that's great, but go back and do the app. That would be a customer satisfaction issue. So we've built this to handle all of these. Granted, we can have a much higher confidence if we are the ones fingerprinting the photo at the point of capture, but we work with all sorts of media, and that's how we built our system.
Can you find, are there ways to detect that this photo is out anywhere else? In the wild out there? I mean, is there a way, like if you this is being used multiple places, are you able to try to detect that as well?
We can detect if it's we can detect if it's been downloaded from the internet. So if it's
Okay.
used elsewhere, each fingerprint is unique. So if the same fingerprint shows up and it happens to be in our database, we can detect that it's been reused as well.
Okay. That's good. That's a good point because then if you saw it and if a company was running that database, they'd know that, hey, this is used multiple times. So here's the question I have. Yeah, if you use the app, let's say you're a company that has a multitude of photographs, and let's say I got 5,000 photographs of different claims. I want to run them through to see if anything pops out. Could somebody do that? Are there ways to work with your company to customize a solution of any sort?
Absolutely. So everything we do is accessed through APIs, but we also have a web interface. So
Okay.
you can make it as simple as dragging and dropping, and I know that could be a little cumbersome if you're talking about 5,000 photos. But we
Okay.
have an interface that you can just drag and drop. We have interfaces through APIs where you can just batch load in photos and start doing the analysis. All of the analysis happens fast and in parallel.
Okay.
So we do customize our solutions, and our APIs go everywhere, and that's typically how we're consumed is via the APIs. So
Okay.
when we talk to carriers and such, they don't want new apps. They just want to be able to add this functionality. So it's sort of a think of it as your spam filter or your firewall for digital media.
Actually,
It,
I think that's a good way to say it too. I mean, really, when you think about it, you're right. Because I think a lot of carriers, for somebody that wants to bring in something new, a lot of carriers have a slow ability to adopt new technologies. I mean, a lot of times in a lot of the conferences I speak at, everybody's talking about moving forward, touchless claims, and driving ahead. But that's what we hope to happen. But many times the talk versus the execution is a different story. And I think anything that can make the process simpler for a carrier so they don't have to put a lot of IT resources in it can help these things come to fruition. That takes me down to another question I have. It's being in the technology space like this. What are some of the challenges you see when you're trying to get into maybe an insurance carrier or a client or customer? What are some of the challenges that you have to try to overcome that you guys run into?
Well, there's a few of them. One is getting there in the first place. And one of our investors is Plug and Play Ventures, which really kind of helps us take a stage in front of all of a huge ecosystem of carriers, which has been super helpful. I think the other thing is making sure our product is differentiated very well. And by making our product so fast, easy to use, and also the fact that we can accept photos from any source, kind of opens up a lot of new use cases for us. But by far the biggest challenge is oftentimes just educating the customer on why you need to do this and what the long-term risk if you don't take any action against potentially manipulated media is. And to go along with that is, once you get past that stage, which I think you alluded to, is how long will it take for this integration effort? And while we can do customizations, we can give you web apps, we can give you APIs, it still becomes a little bit of a roadmap exercise. So sometimes the best thing to do is to integrate into systems that these carriers already use. Like claim systems. You wouldn't happen to know any of those, would you?
A lot of them. Yeah. I think a lot of people, they want the proof of concept first. They want that POC. They want to be able to say, hey, how's it going to work in my specific business? And I think that's what a lot of times as tech companies, you have to spend time doing to get them to get that buy-in. Don't you think sometimes it's a lot? That's one of the biggest ways.
It is a process. I think insurance carriers tend to be very risk averse in adopting new technology. So getting them comfortable using a POC. So we built our system so that it has all of these different ways that you can use it and consume it, whether it's even starting by drag and drop on day one.
And I think that's good. It gives them a way to kind of play around with it and say, how can they build it into their workflow? And then that's what's really good about that. So, talking about all this, it's funny because in this business you're always trying to market, you're trying to pitch, you're trying to get people to see the value of this. This is going sort of in an entrepreneurial way now. If you've been at this for a while, different companies, and this is for entrepreneurs listening out here right now. What do you think if you knew what you knew now back then? What are some of the things that would have made the difference, or that now you've learned so much over these years when you're trying to bring a technology company to the forefront and get out there? What are some of the tips that you wish you'd known back then that you know now that you could give advice to people that are trying to build their company in any space, really?
Well, for tech founders, I always say, always build technology around your business, not a business around your technology, because it's sort of very subtle. But on the other hand, you can get very caught up in the technology instead of driving a business, which is what we're all here for. Listening to your customers is another big thing from day one. Anything that you do internally, you can convince yourself of anything, but until you go out there and play that back to prospects, you don't really know how it's perceived. And finally, the other thing is always expect to have to adapt, right? The markets change. Needs change, the world changes, the state of the world can change. And
I know.
Who would launch a product in the middle of a pandemic, right? So here we are.
Yeah, and I've seen articles that some of the biggest companies ever were launched in even down economic times. You just got to be ready. And I think, and I had another question I was going to ask you about. It's like just general tips for entrepreneurs out there. I always tell people, you got to remember, hey, it's going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of work involved. But what would you say? I think one thing is the importance of the teams you build around you. What has been your experience in the back, in the past, or even now, of like how you build your team? Like, how do you build a team that's cohesive to help have that vision that you guys have as a company? How have you been doing that?
Well, teams are super important. You have to really have you really have to be able to think similarly and be able to adapt quickly. You kind of have to find a type of person with a certain amount of resilience, right? Because again, like I said earlier, things always change, and you may have to take a few twists and turns. And that's also true from a personal level, is always have that resilience and foundation, because you never know what you're going to run into over the course of a startup. And then even the third time around, you're always learning new things. And
I agree.
You never want to, Yeah, you never want to close yourself off to that. Keeping an open mind is such an important thing.
Yeah, I mean, learning. I always tell people you're always learning. You never know. I don't care how many businesses you started, whatever. There's always something you learn, and surround yourself with great people too that can complement you is really important. I think in building a successful company. So what are some things? Anything going on at Attestiv right now you'd like to talk about? Any new things you're launching? Yeah, let our listeners know about what you have going on right now. If anything.
Well, we're always working on new stuff. We are working on some exciting opportunities, actually in healthcare and telehealth.
Yeah.
So a lot of things are moving to telehealth, and now photos and videos are flying around from these visits,
Mm-hmm.
and it's someplace that we can add a lot of value. We're constantly improving our products. We're going to have some even more deep analysis tools that will
Okay.
give you heat maps of where photos and images may have changed. And of course, we're always keeping our eye on this whole problem of deep fakes, which can be a little frightening at times, and looking at ways that we can help there.
Yeah, I've actually seen some videos that are kind of getting to the point where it's going to get, I mean, you could tell they're still faked, but still it gets to the point where if you don't know the origin or really what it is, it can be pretty scary where the way this technology is headed. But well, hey, it's been great having you on, Nicoss. I appreciate you coming on, giving our listeners a little bit about and hear about the company. If you could let our listeners know if how they could get a hold of you, how they can get a demo, how they can get in touch, let us know how they can talk to you.
Well, you can always visit our website at attestiv.com. That's Attestiv without an E. Actually, if you put an E, we'll still take you to the same place. So we've kind of figured that one out.
Uh-huh.
Or you can email us at info@attestiv.com. But from the website, you can set up a demo, read more about us. We're happy to hear from anyone who's interested in learning more.
Awesome. Well, it's great having you on, and I wish you the best of luck. I think you got something, you're onto something here.
Great. Thanks, Ernie.
This has been Focus on Claims with Ernie Bray, President and CEO of ACD.